Every financial and tax planning strategy in Canada seems to be geared towards couples. And once you add in couples with kids, the list grows even more. But singleness in Canada has been on an upward trajectory for decades. And right now, nearly 30% of all households are a single person household in Canada. So today, I'm going to share some of the unconventional benefits of a single person planning to retire. I'll share some of the things that my clients are doing successfully, and then we'll go through a list of priorities that you should have if you're a single person who wants to retire with confidence one day. So let's get right into it right here on the Canadian Money Roadmap podcast. All right off the top, when I talk about being single, there's so many different versions of what that could be. So it could be single by choice. You could be divorced. You could be widowed. You might have kids. You might not have kids. Being single doesn't necessarily determine those things. And so because there's so many different scenarios, my approach in this episode is to not treat any one type of singleness differently than others, even though your specific circumstance will matter in terms of how your financial plan would shake out. But just for practical purposes, I'm just going to treat all types of singleness the same for the sake of this video. And at the same time, I also don't want to come from a perspective of, well, maybe you won't be single one day, because that's just not helpful either. I just want to speak to the part of the population that's often forgotten in terms of financial planning content out there, and hopefully give some encouragement to single people who are frustrated with the lack of specific tax benefits for being single. Okay, let's get into some of the advantages of being single and trying to manage money and plan for retirement. The first one that I often see that is really, really valuable is that there's only one decision maker. It's just you. It's your set of priorities that you have that could be for your lifestyle today, meaning how you want to spend your money and the things that you want to do with your time as well. But time often coincides with money if you're doing activities and traveling and buying things and moving and whatever the case may be. But the priorities that you have are yours. And so you don't have to try to get somebody else on the same page as you. Even if you have a great relationship with your spouse, getting both of you on the same page with all financial priorities is really hard. And so that can be a challenge. So a sneaky advantage of singleness and financial planning is that if you have a priority that you've come up with as something that you want to do, you can plan for it and you can do it. A client told me recently, she said, I spend my money how I want to, and I have a great time. And she really does. She travels all over the world and does all sorts of crazy adventures and meets up with friends and often flies first class, because those are priorities for her. When she is in Saskatoon, she lives much more frugally, but then from there, she gets to prioritize what she wants with her money. So that is really great for her. So being a single decision maker is a great advantage. Second advantage of being single and planning for your finances is that there's no information gaps when it comes to your money. So oftentimes, and you can imagine this, even like think of your parents, if you know how they manage money, most couples have a money person and a not money person. Sometimes there's overlap for sure, but generally speaking, there's someone that carries more of that responsibility, whether it's earning, whether it's paying the bills, whether it's planning, whether it's investing, all sorts of things like that. That person often has so much more information, and so they are able to make decisions with the full picture in mind a little bit more. Whereas the person that isn't the money person, there can be some incongruencies in how they see the world as it relates to their money. And so when you're the only person that knows your financial situation, yes, you have to be the one to know it all, whether you're good with money or not. It's all on you, but you have the keys to the kingdom. You've got all of it. You know exactly where everything is, what you have, how much you make, where it's all going. You can find that information. So there's no information gaps when you're a single person trying to do financial planning. Third one, I'm not really going to dwell on this one too much, but there's no arguments. One of the biggest sources of divorce arguments for sure in a marriage or a partnership revolve around money, and that's been the case probably forever. So if there's no one in your life that speaks into your financial situation, you probably have less conflict in your life, and less conflict is generally a good thing, I would imagine, for most people. And it's just nice to be able to not have money be a source of conflict in your personal life. For many people, it isn't, but for lots of people, it can be. So that is a perhaps small but very significant advantage if you're trying to maintain personal relationships. Another advantage would be the ability to change directions quickly. So because again, it's just you and your priorities and your income and your living arrangements and things like that, switching jobs, moving cities, changing goals, maybe retiring early, retiring later, starting a business, all sorts of things like this can be done with your interests and your goals and your timeline in mind. So if you ever need to make a change, or just want to make a change, you can be much more agile when it comes to your finances. And finally, it's just less complicated. So all of the things that I mentioned in the intro about different tax credits and income splitting and all this kind of stuff, yeah, it can create some financial advantages for sure, maybe paying less taxes and things like that. However, it can be really complicated. And so if you're someone that wants less complication in your financial life, being single is going to provide that. So I hope you don't take that last comment to say you should get a divorce because it's going to make your life simpler. No, not at all. But just comparing the two, planning for the finances of a couple is much more complicated than planning for the finances of a single person. So financial simplicity, I would argue, probably is an advantage of being a single person trying to manage their finances well. Now, in terms of the actual dollars and cents and what people are actually doing, I work with a number of clients who are single. And, full disclosure here, I preach to the converted, right? The people that work with a financial planner are often people that are actively motivated in improving their finances. And so this isn't a general public representation of what single people are doing versus what people in couples are doing. But I was just taking a look at my clients who happen to be single, and here are some things that they're doing with their finances to make sure that they're set up well for the future. The first thing I noticed between most of my clients who are still in the accumulation phase, who are single, they have a high savings rate and they often increase their savings annually. This doesn't necessarily speak to what my clients who are couples or families are doing, but as a single person, saving more is just a priority because there's only one income in the household. And so if you're going to plan for the future, you don't have that ability to rely on somebody else and maybe have a higher income from a spouse or anything like that. And so for yourself, you need to make sure that you have a strong savings rate that's relevant to the goals and the timeline that you have, but also increasing those savings along with inflation most years, if that works for you and it works with your plan. And I've found that a lot of my clients who are single have a plan and execute on that plan at a very high rate. Another thing I noticed with my clients who are single is that many of them have pursued jobs that have pensions. And so perhaps those are public sector jobs, firefighters, police officers, teachers, nurses. Again, this is maybe just by chance, but having jobs that have a pension or a really robust matching program for saving can really, really make a difference if you're looking to retire with confidence in the future. The pension piece being a huge confidence builder because it's a guaranteed stream of income when you retire, but even a robust matching program where you put some into an RSP and your employer matches some, or a defined contribution pension kind of acts very similarly to RSP matching. But that can really make a difference when someone else, your employer, is able to contribute money to your long-term future for you. Easier said than done. I understand it's not easy to just go out and say, okay, well, I'm just going to go find this super high pension job and just do that. No, it's for the right person and the right time, but I'm just trying to find a few similarities between a lot of my single clients. This one is a little unique, probably, and many other financial planners can probably speak to this too, but I found that single clients ask really great questions that are relevant to their situation because they don't have a partner that also knows their situation. So they often come to me as someone who knows the bulk of their financial picture and for advice, big things, little things, changes to their plan or anything like that. So they ask really, really good questions and they spend less time hunting on the internet through forums and stuff looking for generic advice or stuff that's going to point them in the wrong direction. Every day I see crazy stuff on Reddit. There's lots of good stuff on Reddit too, don't get me wrong, but there's lots of crazy stuff or even like just wrong enough advice that might steer someone in the wrong direction. So I found that my single clients are quick to ask good questions and then act on that advice with their own plan based on personalized advice. The last thing that I've noticed that they do is they aggressively stick with those plans. When things change, we adapt and they adapt. And that's just something that I've noticed. So, yeah, I'm preaching to the converted, I know, and perhaps my small sample size of single clients is not representative of single people in general, but these are just some of the things that I noticed that they're all doing to set themselves up for success in the future. Now, in this last section, I want to talk about priorities in terms of the things that you, if you're a single person or someone in your life is single, how you can prioritize different things based on the fact that you don't have a second income, a second person to talk to, or opportunities to maximize tax credits through a bunch of mechanisms that are designed for couples. The first thing is you need to make sure that you don't blow yourself up. You need to have an emergency fund or access to either a line of credit or cash at some point. Things happen, and when it's just you, you need to make sure that you're taken care of first. So having an emergency fund or at least access to a low-cost line of credit really, really matters when there's two people. Maybe your spouse can work a few extra hours or stay home with the kids or, whatever the case may be. When it's just you, you got to be more prepared than the average person that's in a couple in particular, just because you have fewer opportunities for upside on the other side. So yes, definitely having a sufficient emergency fund or access to credit to cover off any emergencies. Number 2 priority from here, everybody should have disability insurance for sure, but when it's just you relying on your income, getting disabled, very seriously disabled, permanently disabled, or even a semi-long-term disability can completely derail your opportunities to ever retire with any sort of financial stability. So making sure you have sufficient disability insurance is critical. Many people have some disability insurance through their work benefits, but there's often an opportunity to add additional coverage. If you go through, say, a medical questionnaire or something like that, you can also buy personal disability insurance that works in conjunction with your workplace benefits as well. All depends on your occupation and your health to some extent, a little bit less so than life insurance perhaps, but getting disability insurance and sufficient disability insurance to make sure that your income is not impacted by a disability, especially because you generally don't control those kind of things. There are injuries or accidents, illnesses, all sorts of things like that. So disability insurance in particular for single people is very, very important. Critical illness insurance is something that would probably be more relevant for single people than someone that's in a couple or someone who's married. Again, just for the same reason. So critical illness and disability insurance are what we would call living benefits. So you would claim those while you're still alive. Most people would have life insurance. As a single person, if you have kids, I'd highly recommend you have life insurance, especially if you have debt, depending on the age of the kids, all sorts of different factors there. But if it's just you and you don't have kids, there's probably less of a case for life insurance if you were to pass away. But the living benefits of critical illness and disability would matter a bit more. Critical illness, I didn't talk about this one yet, but it all depends on the policy, but it generally would cover diagnosis of a certain condition. All depends on your policy. So you could have, oftentimes you see like the big four, let's see if I remember them, cancer, heart attack, stroke, and coronary artery bypass. Those are kind of like the 4 big ones for critical illness. And then there's some policies that would have significantly more than that, which could cover things like serious burns or loss of limbs, Parkinson's, those kind of things. So the way that one works is that if you receive a diagnosis and you survive for a certain amount of time after your diagnosis, then it would pay out from there, and it's a tax-free lump sum of cash in most cases. So that can really help make the difference to cover off some expenses in the meantime, to take some time away from work. And then disability insurance often kicks in after a longer extended period of time of being unable to work. Disability insurance, again, is just based on your ability to earn an income through work. Critical illness insurance is based on you getting sick. So they're a little bit different, but oftentimes they go hand in hand depending on what the situation could be. Third priority that you should make sure to take advantage of is take a look at all of your tax deferred and tax free plans. So using TFSAs, RRSPs, and RDSPs if you are disabled or you have a disability that would qualify for the disability tax credit. RDSP, I'll go into that in a separate episode entirely. But if you're a single person who qualifies for an RDSP, you should definitely be using that because there's tons of grant money available that you can use for yourself for long-term planning. The RDSP is designed for people who have disabilities and cannot save meaningfully on their own. That doesn't mean that you're disabled, you can't, but that's just how it works. If you qualify for it, you get the same amount of credits that someone else with a perhaps a more serious disability might have. So they don't really discriminate on that. It's based on your income. But using TFSAs, RSPs, RDSPs, if it makes sense, to maximize the tax benefits long term, because taxes are going to be the thing that really limits your overall spending. And that's true if you're single, it's true if you're married. But taking advantage of those as much as possible is a really good idea. If you are single in particular, having a plan for what is a really optimal breakdown between the usage of those plans will make even more of a difference, because you can't split income on the back end when you turn your savings and investments into cash to live on in retirement. So having a plan on the way in matters a whole lot more. So again, someone who's married, they can split income that comes out of a RIF. So an RSP turns into a RIF. After age 65, you can share half of that income with your spouse. So it can be really simple to kind of wash over any sort of inequities that you had when you're in your accumulation years. But if it's just you got to get it right on the front end. So having a plan for accumulation can really help shape the tax picture you have on the decumulation side, but taking advantage of those plans in the right order for your situation will make a huge difference. The next priority that you should consider is the timing of CPP and OAS. I'm going to get people in the comments for sure, just based on how other CPP videos have gone here, but I would suspect if it's just you don't have a spouse to plan for if you were to unexpectedly pass away. Again, if it's just you, your main priority is probably not running out of money while you're alive. If it's just you and you die and you didn't get the most out of your CPP, trust me, you won't care, because you're not here to care about it anymore. But if you need to plan for your spouse's financial well-being, you're probably going to make a different choice on the timing of your CPP or your OAS. Perhaps it's a little bit different between the two, but your timing decision will probably factor in your spouse. But again, if it's just you, it's probably going to be different. So you have fewer variables to consider, but you can do it with a little bit more open eyes. You don't have to do as many hypothetical scenarios if it's just you planning for your long-term income needs, and then you can just run the numbers. And you can look out at projections and see what situations are most realistic for you to consider in terms of your CPP. High level, if you're looking to maximize the value of your CPP over time and you live to a typical life expectancy or longer, deferring your CPP longer makes a lot of sense. You could spend your own money first. It's not about maximizing income when you're in your 90s. No, it's making sure you don't run out of income when you're in your 90s, because being in long-term care is very, very expensive. And if you run out of money and your CPP isn't enough to cover it, oops, that can be really challenging. So deferring CPP is not about maximizing income while you're in your 90s. No, because what you're doing is you're going to trade off your spending from your pot of money and defer that to have a backstop of guaranteed income from CPP that indexes with inflation into the future. So if it's just you, perhaps you might consider deferring your CPP a little bit longer than usual. Definitely longer than the general public, because the general public takes it the day they turn 60. But anyways, if you're looking to do prudent financial planning, I would highly recommend that you take a close look at the timing of your CPP and OAS to make sure that you optimize your income for your long-term needs, goals, and priorities. Next one, if you're single, like I mentioned before, that's what my clients are doing in general, but having a high savings rate to overcome the lack of a second income in the household. Yep, there's only a few ways to get ahead. You can make more, you can spend less, and that's the only way to get more in savings. So if you have a manageable lifestyle, or you could have a higher paying job or something like that, but it's not fun to say, but if you just have one income, you just have to be a little bit more prudent with how you do your saving. There's just less wiggle room for having a lower savings rate during your accumulation years. So coming up with a plan with an appropriate savings rate and making sure you stick to that matters. What I've often seen with people that are single that are trying to plan for their retirement is that they save every penny they possibly can, or they feel like they are, or whatever the case may be. And in some cases, they might be saving too much, but they just haven't run the numbers and they don't actually know what is a reasonable amount to be saving or the right amount, which leads me to my last point here is that I would highly recommend for a single person to work with a professional to build a plan and offload the stuff that you don't want to do. Perhaps that's investment management too. And you can have somebody that knows your financial situation inside and out. And that way you can bounce things off of them and you can talk to them about when your life changes and they can give you objective advice about your situation. I think it's really important to have a plan and working with a professional to come up with that plan and work with them on an ongoing basis to adapt the plan as your life changes, I think is really important. If that sounds interesting to you, you can click on the link below and maybe we can chat some more. But if not, I appreciate you watching this video or listening to the podcast. If there's anything in here that you wanted clarification on or you want me to expand in another video, glad to do that. Feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks so much for listening and for watching, and we will catch you on another episode of the Canadian Money Roadmap.